All right, before the break, we heard from Idaho Senator Jim Risch about the good news on the COVID vaccine front. Joe Paris also asked Senator Risch about the 2020 presidential election and the transition process between the current president and President-elect Joe Biden.
There's a popular idea that may not have any gravitas to it that the transition of power could be messy. I know that this is something that's said on the cable news shows as, oh, will it be some kind of crazy back and forth? What can you say to Americans? Because you've seen the process work.
Sure.
What can you say to Americans about how this peaceful process has always worked in D.C.? Does it feel the same this time?
244 years we've been doing this. Circle two dates. One is December 14th, the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December. That's when the Electoral College meets. They will elect the president. They're the only ones that can elect a president under the Constitution. And on January 20th, there will be a swearing-in ceremony on the front steps of the Capitol building. I'll be sitting about this close to it, as will Vicki, and we'll move on from there, and we're Americans. We know how to do this.
In terms of the COVID response and the transition, I've spoken with Idahoans. They say, I really like the way the Trump administration is doing things. I've talked to Idahoans that are critical of how the Trump administration is handling things. Through a transition, and now with Vice President Biden involved in the transition, have you had an opportunity to speak with him about different strategies?
You know, I've had conversations which I keep between myself and whoever I'm talking with on this. But look, I think what people need to understand is there are 2 million federal employees. The number of the transition is de minimis. All of those other 2 million, whether they're one of the 17 intelligence agencies, whether they're serving in the military, whether they're producing vaccines, whether they're distributing vaccines, these things are done regardless of who the president of the United States is and regardless who the top management is. Do
you trust in the integrity of American elections?
Sure. One of the good things we have going in American elections is how diffuse it is. We should never, ever embrace the idea of a federal election. Elections are held by the states, and that is subcontracted down to the counties and then down to the precincts. For anybody to try to manipulate an election, it's got to be pretty widespread to be able to do that, because every single precinct is handled differently. It's counted differently.
Two groups of people that I've heard a lot about lately are election workers and frontline healthcare workers. Unfortunately, a very small minority of conspiracy theorists have made these volunteers and frontline health workers out to be things they're not. What can you say on a general basis about the great work the election volunteers did here in Idaho and across America, as well as the frontline healthcare workers that are working to take care of our communities?
The frontline healthcare workers are in the same category as saints. I mean, these are people who put it all on the line every morning when they get up and go to work, knowing that they're going to be exposed, that what they do is dangerous to them, to their families. And they do it because they love their fellow man. They certainly are in that category. As far as the elections are concerned, these are people that are citizen patriots. They do this. Almost all elections are handled by volunteers. Certainly there's the professionals at the top that choreograph it, the Secretary of States and that sort of thing. But when it comes down to the precincts of actually voting people and handling the ballots and everything, these are patriots. These are modern patriots that want to see a free and fair election in America, and they work hard at it mostly across America.
All right, Joe, he said he trusts the process of the election, but did you ask him, and did he answer the question about whether he believes there is widespread voter fraud taking place across the United States?
We spoke, specifically about the process of the elections and, at the different levels, as he just alluded to in that last part of our interview. We didn't talk specifically about the claims of fraud. What Senator Risch was driving home, though, throughout our interview is that America has gone through a lot of things over the history of this country. What we're going through right now in terms of transitioning from President Trump into President-elect Joe Biden is not something that we can't overcome. As you heard him, you have to trust in the process as you trust into the elections. And again, as he mentioned, there's 2 dates to circle on the calendar when the electors actually put in the official votes coming up in December, and of course the inauguration of the president in January.
And he said he expects to be there. I guess it depends on how close he sits, though, depending on what party is taking office that day. All right, thank you very much, Joe.